do this. Anyway, here we are, and I think we're going to start the show, so to speak. Well, not the show, the beautiful, beautiful,
Yeah, man.
the
It's not a show.
transmission from the outer worlds to the
Who's taking
innermost
tickets?
world, or the other way around. Whatever, whichever way it goes. I was just saying you were here and graced us last week, Chuck. We were all familiar, except for Jamie that hasn't maybe heard of you before. Uh, and usually Chuck does a beautiful work of introducing somebody that has not had the experience of his channeling, which is very fluent. And you'll be surprised how quickly he comes into it. Lisetu and Chuck have been doing this for some time, and in our high vibe sessions, quite for some time. So we welcome Chuck once again to the channel, and we let you take over at this point and introduce Jamie a little bit to who you are, and then roll into whatever you would like this set to do for us today.
Go to say to.
I was hopeful the cheerleaders are going to be here today. Where's your pom-poms, man? So, hey, Jamie, how you doing? So I'll tell you just a little bit without, boring these guys because they've heard it, multiple times. But let's see. So I have a podcast that I do, an audio podcast. It's called Freeform Spiritual Wisdom. And I think I began it, I don't know, 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago. I don't know, something like that. Anyway, so what I began to recognize in the podcast, because, when you edit a podcast, you have to go back and listen to it again so you can do the editing. And I began to realize that there was someone else sharing information besides just this version of me during the podcast, just to say it briefly. And that was happening more and more frequently in the podcast. And I'm sure Willow's experienced a little of that because they're probably getting to recognize this energy as well. And then I also realized that prior to that, that same energy had expressed itself in some blogging that I was doing before I started that. So there's an individual who shows up on this format on occasion. His name is Serge, and Serge has been channeling for 42, 44 years, something like that. And I've known Serge for like 20 years, and I've been part of that organization. And there's a group of us that get together every Sunday morning. And so, like about 1.5 years ago, I said, "Hey guys, how'd you feel? I've been channeling, not intentionally, but as part of my audio podcast. It just kind of pops in. How would you guys feel if I started channeling? On Sundays?" And they said, "Yeah, that's great." So when we get together, that's one of the things that happens. So I've been doing that with those guys for about 1.5 years or so, and then I got into the mix with these crazy individuals maybe 6 months ago, or I don't know what it was. It's been a little while. And then the Thursday night group, actually the Thursday night group was first. And then there's a Friday group that I channel with as well on occasion. And then there's another group too. But so Ray was a part of the naming process, actually. At one point, after I'd been into doing the channeling for a while, I was wondering about a name, and so I asked those inner parts about a name, and pretty much the response was choose one, whatever feels good for you. And so I've always been interested in the energy that is expressed here with dragon imagery and that type of stuff for many years, and so. Due to the attributes that I usually correlate to that is a deep sense of power and wisdom, and I also wanted a theme of bridging in there to aid individuals in. I'll use the word discovering right now, even though it might be a little limited, but discovering that connection to themselves once again, bridging that connection that's really always there with themselves. And so, in English language, dragon is Drago or Draco. things like that. And then I was looking for a word that meant to bridge. And I was looking at a whole variety of languages. And Ray and I were in conversation one day, and he knew I was doing this. And he said, "Hey, here's this Sanskrit word." And so Setu is actually an abbreviation of the word that he suggested. And so then I abbreviated it because I like the way that Disetu sounds. And so that's the name that I've used since then. And when I first began, um, I'm also familiar with Bashar's work. And so when I first began, what I recognized was an energy that I'd become familiar with through my association with Bashar, which is a female of their species called Anima, became part of the energy that was showing up for me. And I found out later through Daryl that one of the things that Anima did for them and does for individuals is to, in a sense, introduce them to other energies. And so they were helpful in introducing me with other parts of myself, actually, as well as other expressions of consciousness. And then they left. Once I had kind of settled into that. So mostly it's that more encompassing me, whatever you'd want to call it. If you want to call it the inner you, the higher you, you as essence, whatever. That's typically the energy. And then that aspect of me and all of us, of course, we have many, many, many expressions of that us. And so various of those will step forward with a little different feel to it at various times, kind of depending on who I'm with and what's asked in the moment, those types of things. So anyway, that's just a little briefly about kind of what's transpired with me in a way. So these guys are used to a particular manner in which I express, and I've been given a little information that today's going to be just a tad different in the beginning, especially. Yeah, and so then we'll maybe do some more of the traditional stuff. But so give me a second. So we would greet you once again and express, as we always do, a deep appreciation for the ability to interact with all of you this way. Because, of course, it adds so much to our exploration of our own consciousness. So, as was mentioned, we would like to interact with you and have you interact in a different way than what is more traditional for us. So, if you would please, where you are, all of you, just gently close your eyes and find yourself in a calm and relaxed state. Take a few deep breaths in and let them out slowly. Just facilitate a calm and relaxed state. And then we would like to have you think of a song, any song that when you listen to it moves you deeply, connects you to those deep feeling states that lie within yourself. And then shift your attention to an individual in your life that does the same thing, that in their association, you feel deeply in that individual's company. Once again, we will shift your attention. Imagine yourself, if you will, in nature. Of all the spots that you've been in, choose one that when you find yourself there, you find yourself connecting deeply, feeling deeply into the experience of nature as you are there. Slowly, if you would, bring the palm of your right hand and lay it over your heart. And if you have the room, but it's not totally necessary, extend your left arm out in front of you with your palm open and your hand facing forward. Now, bring your attention to your heart. And then bring your attention to the all of you, to that infinite expression of you. As you feel your heart, as you stretch your arm and your hand out, feel the waves of emotion, the waves of energy, the waves of love, the waves of support land upon the palm of your hand, flow up your arm and into your heart. Feel the rhythm as they are waves that lap on the shore. Feel them grow stronger and deeper. Feel them buoy you, bringing with them a certainty in your existence, a deep trustingness in who you are and your ability to express yourself in all ways. Feel the waves contact your hand, flow down your arm, and fill your heart and your body again and again and again and again and again and again and again. As it fills you, you can no longer contain it. And as each wave flows down your arm and into your heart and your body, it explodes around you and you shoot it out into the rest of creation. Experience yourself shooting that energy out as it flows into you again and again and again and again and again and again. Your connectivity to all of existence is immediate in this moment. All expressions of existence send their energy out in the same way that you are in this moment. You all reach each other. You all share with each other. You all support each other. As you feel the energy of that deeper aspect of you fill you, you have a deep recognition of how that energy feels. You know how it feels to be you. Remember that feeling. Utilize that feeling in any time that you need to provide you with a reminder of the connectivity that you have with existence. Allow your arm to now rest in your lap. Rest in the incredible feeling that you have within you in this moment. Remember it. And when you are prepared, move yourself back to the chair that you're in, to the meeting that is in progress in this moment. You've come to recognize that there is a consistency in the information that we share with you, though it is expressed in a number of different ways. And that message is about your own ability, your own power, the infinite nature of yourselves. There are many around you who express themselves in ways that are helpful to you. And there are many ideas and themes that you can utilize to help you to come to a deeper understanding of who and what you are. And all these, of course, are valid. But beyond all of that is you and your ability. There is no individual you will ever encounter. There is no individual that you have heard of whose ability is greater than your own. It's only the realization that may not quite be there yet. We've mentioned to you, and we believe all of you embrace this idea already. But your experience here, of course, is purposeful. It's a chosen experience. It provides you with experiences that, just as you shared your energy earlier in our meditation, you share with all of consciousness. You provide, in that regard, in a manner of speaking, a great service for the rest of consciousness as you explore this particular physical dimension. You provide breadcrumbs, perhaps we can say, that entice other aspects of consciousness to perhaps explore this dimension as well. Your exploration is never wrong. There is no way your exploration can ever be wrong. You have, in fact, never made mistakes in your life. Now, may you have experienced difficulties. May you have experienced pain, discomfort. Yes, those things you may have done. But it's not because you did something incorrect or wrong. It's not that there is something wrong with your creation in that moment. We've mentioned that those of you who participate in this particular physical dimension, because of course there are many, are like those individuals who choose to scale Mount Everest or choose to cross the Amazon jungle in South America. You are explorers, adventurers, willing to delve into areas of consciousness that are challenging to explore because they are so very different in the way they are experienced than what your, we'll just call it your natural state is. Now, of course, in this time period, you're all becoming increasingly familiar with who and what you are. And so your experiences take on a different feeling than what they once did. And it is gatherings around your planet that may be similar to this gathering, may be dissimilar to this gathering. And in whatever way they're being expressed, that through energy, aid all of you in this shift that you're all making. And as we've said before, and others have as well, you are making it. It is not that you may do it. You are doing it. Within what's called simultaneous time, it is a, as you say, done deal. Now all you have to do is open your arms to where one version of you already is and express yourself and experience yourself as that you. Now that doesn't mean, of course, that that won't be a process, because that's one of the delicious things about this particular physical reality, is that it involves process. And each step that you take on that process within that journey is, of course, its own experience. And it is to be embraced as its own experience. To focus too strongly on the outcome, maybe we'll say, will, in a manner of speaking, sort of short circuit your process for you, because you won't embrace the process for what it is, because you have ideas and concepts of what the process should be from within the process. It's a little like, from your position now, you can look back at events that were occurring in your life when you were perhaps 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and see them with a more encompassing view than what you did when you were involved in them. The same thing happens now. There's a you that is always there to guide you, amongst others, that is intimately familiar with you and your process, as well as where you're most likely to go in the process from this place. And it understands that there are no missteps in your process. There is only exploration. within your process. There's only a deeper understanding of this particular experience in your process. And so we will pause there and see if there's anything you would like to add to our direction, anything you would like us to further in what we've said, or any other questions that you may have.
Willow.
Hi, I had a question for, I was wondering, what is a new discovery that you as Desetu has made recently, and how is that added to your experience of self as this very broad, expanded being? Are you still on a path of discovery, or is that something that is not part of your theme anymore? Thank you.
As consciousness, not only us, but all of you, discovery is perpetual. There is no end to discovery. We could say in one way that our interactions with all of you are new discoveries. Because, of course, each time we interact, your expressions are, in a manner, fresh. So we have a brand new experience. Now, we, like you do, only you're unaware of it. We have many, 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 many interactions that are happening at one time. And all of those interactions are, in fact, fresh interactions. So just like when you meet somebody, whoever that individual may be, even if it's somebody that you have, in that regard, met before, that meeting is fresh. It is a new meeting. The way that you will approach each other in that moment is new. The things you will discuss are new. The energies that you will share are new. It is a fresh experience. There are no experiences, in fact, that you have within consciousness that are reused experiences. All of your experiences perpetually are fresh experiences. So one of those would be our interactions with all of you.
Thank you. I'm grateful to be part of your expansion of yourself, as are all of us here today. We're all contributing to your awareness of all the ways that consciousness can express itself.
And we are very, very happy in that regard to have that same experience as we interact with all of you.
Thank you.
Welcome again to Say Too. We certainly appreciate that meditation and lesson. I was able to connect with my soul, with the vibration of my soul group and align with that. I thought that that was very powerful, although I found it was more difficult to operate in a physical capacity in that regard, which is not an issue. So thank you for that.
We bring you words in our energy so frequently, and we wanted to approach our interaction with you just a little bit differently this time.
It was a success. Thank you. I'm curious about our galactic neighbors and some of their various roles in the human ascension, or the ascension of the Earth Collective, more correctly. We know from Bashar that the Yaels and other races are helping the hybrid children with their education and preparedness for life on Earth. And we know that there are at least another dozen entities who we may be aware of, which are related to that mission. And today, the Tall Whites requested to come through me, and they indicated that the Arcturians were going to help them integrate or have help them and humans integrate. And that got me thinking about what other roles do specific races of our galactic neighbors fill. I know it's fluid, but are there any categories or anything like that you may be able to provide? Thank you.
So the various aspects of consciousness who occupy the various dimensions of consciousness that they occupy if, and it depends on their relationship with you. And by that we mean this. As that encompassing you, that incredibly vast you that is boundless, you express yourself in many ways as many species of consciousness, this being one of them. The others that you've mentioned also being varieties of your expression, because of course you are, in one of your capacities, all of consciousness. There are aspects of consciousness, groupings of consciousness, areas of consciousness, whatever term you would like to apply, that have a familiarity with your process in this moment. Through that, they share energy with you in the ways that, as they pay attention to, and we'll just say, this particular flow of time for you, they know will be the most helpful for you. And we know that you have, through your experience, a great propensity to consider your interactions with all these individuals in a very singular way because of the manner in which you still tend to experience the flow of time. But these interactions are happening with many layers of who and what you are. As far as this flow is concerned, what they are interested in is you deepening your own awareness of who and what you are. Because they are aware that it is within that action that your interaction with them will be the most beneficial for you. In fact, it's through that action that you will be able to come to an actual awareness of your interaction with them. Otherwise, you are left with stories and other people's accounts of things that they've experienced in their reality. In your experience here, you perceive yourself as a physical body with a boundary. And of course, as a result of that, your ideas of interactions, even though you have some conceptualization of the way that consciousness moves and melds and flows together, you think in terms, again, of more singular expressions of self. But there is a flowing, perhaps we'll say, of you and all of these other expressions that goes on continuously. And the energy that you experience here has very much to do with where you are in your experience of yourself in that moment. where you are in your exploration, what beliefs you are utilizing in that moment, what allowances you are making for the information that's around you to show up in your reality. So we'll stop at that point.
More to unpack. Thank you.
Hi, Disetta. Last week, you spoke about quite a few things that were of great depth and interest to me. And you said something along the lines that when we make a shift, we essentially are creating another universe immediately around us. And at another point, you spoke about the word. New words will come. And I would say, too, that new concepts will come. And with that, we're creating more of that universe that's around us individually. And of course, there's a collective element of it. But the concept of it creating a universe, in my mind, takes me in the direction of also creating the so-called multiverse and beyond. Can you comment on that some more, please?
So your tendency, of course, and when we say you, we're speaking of individuals who are in the midst of this experience, is to think in terms of space, a distance that is covered between, let's say, here and your moon, or here and your sun, or between your sun and another sun. These perceptions that you have of these things are a part of your experience here. They are not, in fact, a reality in that regard, however. In other words, distance, while it is a valid exploration as part of your experience within this physical reality, is part of the experience only. It does not exist in the way that you believe it exists within the experience. So, again, if we walked to the shore of one of your oceans with a large glass and we scooped the water of the ocean out, and then we walked to another part of the ocean just briefly, and then we dumped it back in, the water that we dumped in is not just a small part of the ocean, it is in fact all of the ocean. So again, you are all of consciousness. You are free to use any aspect of consciousness in any way that you want, in any moment that you want. In fact, you're doing that while a part of you is doing this as well. So, in that regard, you are what is termed in this reality the multiverse. That is you as well. And what that means is an unlimited number of universes. And we know that you can conceptualize that, but to attempt to think in that regard sometimes is a little confounding. Unlimited. No end to the number of universes. And in fact, just as each interaction that you have is fresh, universes are being created, shall we say, perpetually, always. There's no end to the creation of universes. There's no end to any type of creation. It continues infinitely. Now there's expansion in that. There's interaction in that. There's many paths that are taken in those creations. But there's no limitations in those regards. Now, the thing is that understanding those infinite aspects of yourself, we'll phrase it like that in this moment, is not really so important for you in this moment or in this process, because that's just what you are. We would suggest instead to embrace your process, to embrace what you're doing now. Now, yes, you're moving in a direction where you understand larger portions of who and what you are, and you'll have interactions with other aspects of consciousness that you're not aware of in this moment. And all that is fine. And you are doing that, and you will do that. So we would suggest to stay a little closer to home in that regard, to focus on those things, those directions, and especially the things that affect your physical life, shall we say. Because it's in addressing those to the greatest degree that you can that these other movements of yourself that in this moment seem so very distant to you will begin to become closer to you. Doesn't mean you can't keep in mind that there's all of that you out there. But what's important in this moment is this you, this expression of you, what you're doing right now. Keep your focus there. If of itself it expands and pulls in more information, then that's fantastic. Follow those directions. But to put your attention on, maybe in the moment we'll call them far-flung ideas of who and what you are, and in that, to not pay attention to what it is that's in front of you here, we'll suggest it's not the reason why you are here.
Thank you. Heidi?
I was thinking about my question, and I think I'm going a little bit off topic of finding out who and what they are. So I can reserve my question for another time. It's a personal experience, or
Feel free to ask your question. There is
Okay.
no question off topic.
okay. So yesterday I joined my first CE5 meditation group, and there were 19 of us there. And before we started our meditation, there happened to be about 8 or 9 birds that flew by. And I looked at them and I thought, there's something special about those birds. And a few minutes later, one of the other participants said that she sees energy. And she was looking at those birds too, because she could see an energetic sphere around each bird as it flew. And so then we went into our meditation. Just before we did, I looked down and there was a rock, and I felt like it wanted me to pick it up. So I did. And I was thinking, okay, well, I'm connecting to this particular land. I'm holding it. We're in the meditation. And then while we're in the meditation, I heard a sound, and I didn't know what it was. So I opened my eyes, and there was a huge flock of those birds that went by. It took them at least 20 seconds to go by. I don't know. I didn't count. But if I had to guess, there was hundreds of birds. And I looked around the group, and everyone else had their eyes closed except for that same other person who had commented on the birds before. So this morning after I washed the rock, I looked at it and there's a bird um, uh, in the rock. Just the way the rock is the coloring of the rock. So I took the rock and showed it to my daughter, and I said, "What do you see?" And she said, "Well, I see a bird." So my question is about the birds. How can
Yes.
I want to know.
We understand your experience.
Okay.
And of course, as is becoming increasingly frequent for you, we will acknowledge your ability to pay attention to when certain aspects of consciousness are reaching out to connect to you. So beyond that, we will talk in terms of time, a flow of time. As the idea of your dimension was coming together, and there were certain groups of consciousness that, we'll just say in this moment, had the idea and flowed their energy into this particular creation so that whoever wanted to join them in that creation could. There was, we'll phrase it like this, an essence and individual who represented one of those collections of consciousness. That individual, we'll call them that essence, that entity, that we could say oversoul because you're familiar with the word, something quite vast. That particular expression of consciousness is quite involved in your shift. And it shares a portion of itself with each and every bird on your planet. It will frequently catch your attention with birds. And when that occurs, there are other things that are going on behind the scenes. Part of the idea that's been utilized, part of the idea of hybrid individuals has to do with how this individual has interacted with your dimension. They have, in the way that you show up on this planet, they have expressed 9 aspects of themselves that have shown up on your planet. They are approximately Willow's age right now. They are all what you would call male individuals. And for the individuals who they live amongst, they've noticed the uniqueness of these individuals. They express themselves in very aware ways. Certain of you, in fact, all of you here, from the aspect of the, we'll call it the larger you that you flow from, that larger you has a particular type of an association with those, we'll call them original groups of consciousness that form the idea of your physical dimension. You have a particular affinity with those groups. You merge your energy with those groups. You do that because That's how you wanted to explore this dimension. Not everybody does that in this dimension. You do. That, in part, results in the desire you have to explore yourself. The connections that all of you feel to your planet in ways that are different than some individuals do. Your abilities to recognize other individuals who explore as you do. There will be individuals on your planet who will not embrace the rest of who are and what they are while they are on your planet. They will live a life that was a life that was more common to individuals to live, we'll say just for reference sake, 70, 80, 90 years ago. Because that's the way that they want to express and explore this reality as this shift is going on. They will choose not to explore it as someone who is shifting, but rather somebody who is exploring it, observing the shift happen around them. None of you here fall into that category, of course. But the birds, along with being an aspect of consciousness that you connect with naturally anyway, because you have such a strong connection with nature, in this regard, in this instance, there was this addition that came forward in their energy of this other entity, this other essence, the role they play in the expansion that all of you are going through right now, and the connections that you actually already have there, and allowed to, or chose is a better word, chose to bring into your energy a little more deeply as you gathered with those individuals. And that is what we'll say.
Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome.
Willow.
Hi again. I was wondering if you could explain what belief is involved in creating the experience of overstimulation, specifically for energetically sensitive individuals who have a great capacity to feel and perceive information on a multitude of levels.
Part of that will be the belief that you are the physical you. And in that, there is some barrier between a fuller understanding of the abilities that you have and your ability to direct them in any way, shape, and form that you would want to, at any moment that you want to. It is not as common as it once was for individuals who are exploring as all of you explore, to talk more in terms of experiences they had that seem to begin and then reoccur in a way that seemed to be out of their control, because that was the way that individuals initially thought of those things, that they were something that were separate from them. And in that, when they came into their experience, they were not their experience, they were an experience happening to them. Now, we understand that this is not so much your approach, but there is an understanding, and when we talk about beliefs, a belief that the collective holds about these things that is yet much more common than your blossoming awareness of things. And so in that, as these experiences continue with that, you'll find your ability to direct those experiences to be enhanced almost each time that they occur.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a very helpful new perspective. And I guess more specifically, I'm interested in like the occasional moment that overstimulation uh, arrives in, comes up. Uh, is would that be more of an accumulation of things that were previously out of my band of awareness that are just suddenly brought to the surface because a high vibration sort of um, acted as a trigger for those that come up? Or is it more of a deep-seated belief that there is a lack of capacity to process the information in a comfortable way?
Do this for us if you would. Describe your experience of the overstimulation.
Um, well, it's mostly sensory input. Like sometimes I can handle lots of sounds and smells and visuals, and it's all fine. I'm able to balance it out because I'm holding a very balanced state of being within myself. I feel very centered. But then some mornings I wake up and it's just like from the beginning, everything feels like it's too much, too loud, too physical reality feels like very unfamiliar all of a sudden. And it's difficult to integrate all of that sensory input into my body in a way that feels, I guess, comfortable. So,
Yes. So this is in fact that. In those instances, it's that. Your reintegration, because your exploration during your sleep time is very encompassing. You're exploring a lot of things, and you are bringing that experience very, very, very close to this experience. The interface is very, very close. The difficulty in that for you in this moment is that being able to hold all of that information in your awareness at one time is not something that you have a familiarity with yet. And so what you're doing is you're practicing, perhaps we'll say. You're seeing, not seeing. You are giving yourself opportunities to have that experience at various times, to become increasingly familiar with being able to handle more information.
that makes a lot of sense.
The word that you use, overwhelm, is something that the you that understands itself as the you that understands those energies wants to move you beyond. This is your method. So, as it occurs, realize that it's you not just sticking your toe in the pool any longer, but jumping in waist deep. But it won't be over your head. It will just be waist deep. So attempt to relax in the experience and utilize whatever in the moment shows up for you to, and it feels like you already have some methods, to center yourself and to calm yourself in your experience. But they will continue for you, but they will change. Their tenor will change.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely gotten easier as time has gone on. These moments of overstimulation don't occur nearly as often as they used to. It's everything feels much more I don't know, easier, I guess is the simplest word to use. It's easier to process the new information and actually differentiate between what I'm receiving and apply it in my waking life instead of just having to sort of turn off some of my consciousness because it's too much information to handle. It's actually becoming more organized.
Yes, that will be the practice.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Christiana.
Hello, and thank you again for the co-creation. You mentioned earlier our bigger nature and how we are related to the ones that created or influenced this dimension or the 3D, what we experience now, if I understood correctly.
Yes.
Thank you. And I find it quite interesting that recently I find myself very often consciously standing outside and scanning my surroundings and changing them. So upgrading, fixing, making more clean and pretty, and I do all these changes. Could you maybe mention what effect this has on a quantum level?
One of the things to keep in mind is that, and something that is a little bit unfamiliar from within your experience, is you have a tendency to think in terms of cause and effect, that one thing occurs prior to something else occurring, regardless of which end it quote unquote begins. It's more like if you can think of this version of you and the non physical version of you as two sides of the same coin. If I flip that coin in the air, both of the sides of that coin move at the same time. Yes? So when you experience yourself doing things here, it's in response to actions that are happening for you non physically. They occur actually simultaneously. And so there's a symbolic nature to it, of course. So if you're cleaning things up here, if you are arranging things in the way that you would like to have them more here, if they're more pleasing to you here, that speaks to you about a flow of your own energy and what you're doing with your connections, shall we say, behind the scenes as well. Not that those feeling states carry over behind the scenes, because you're open to all interactions in that version of yourself. Here, of course, you have some preferences. And so it's really a symbolic thing about you doing what you want to do, configuring your energy in the way that you would like to, in the way that seems a little cleaner to you, shall we say, using those words, in a way that seems a little bit more organized to you, perhaps setting yourself up for connections that are different and you'll experience in different ways than what you have previously.
Thank you.
I don't think we have any more questions here tonight. Desetu, if you would like to give us a little additional message, we're open to it, of course.
We would just reiterate, as we did when we began, once we finished our meditation, to attempt to listen to yourself as much as you possibly can. There is no more powerful mentor out there than your own connection with yourself. Because you are, and you stretch into all of existence. All the information that is out there is, in that regard, at your fingertips. Now, you can utilize any information that comes your way, but realize this as well. You are the one that creates your experience of reality. Whatever information shows up in your reality, regardless of the source that within that reality you claim that it comes from, you have to create that information in your reality. So it still comes from you. So always embrace your own ability and your own connection to your own infinite you. You will never steer yourself wrong in that regard. It's not to say it may not be confusing at times, but you will never steer yourself wrong. And we will leave you with that.
Thank you, Desetu.
Thank you. You know, Chuck looks a lot like Desetu.
That's what I keep hearing. Everybody tells me that.
I wonder if
Oh,
Desatu says that. Probably
no,
not.
they think they're better looking.
The meditation was phenomenal, and
Yeah.
That idea began to show up about 3 days ago that
mhm.
that we were going to do something different, and it wanted to be very much a connectivity thing and a feeling of the energies of consciousness. I wasn't quite sure how it was going to unfold. Um, so yeah, but I knew we were going to do something different.
Yeah, there was a number of things that came to me, and I saw that Ray had a comment about soul family, put him in touch with soul family.
Yep.
And interestingly, and I have no idea what Deseto has to do around here when you're not here, but a couple of nights ago, I had a dream, and following that, I had those things that happen occasionally on YouTube that you click and all of a sudden it just tells you exactly what you've been thinking about the night before. And that had to do with soul family coming to merge more in my life. And
So this has got implications to those 9 groups of consciousness that I know was shared earlier. So as we think about the individuals who've joined us here over the time that I've been here anyway, different individuals have different natural inclinations. I like nature, but I don't connect with nature in the same way that Heidi does, or Arla does. Uh, I have an awareness of extraterrestrial, we call them presences, other beings, but I don't connect the way that, let's say, Willa does, or Ray does, or oh my gosh, I'm forgetting his name in the moment. He loves nature as well. We know him very well here.
Patrick?
Patrick, yes.
Yeah, there you are.
Right, or Patrick does, right? Natural inclinations. And so this is associated with the choices that you make from the perspective of that larger you as you associate yourself with this dimension, is my understanding, about how you want to flavor your exploration. Because there are a number of flavors that you can give it, and you do that. You layer filters, shall we say. That's a little tighter than what it actually is, but we'll just call them that, filters, to how you experience this. And it's quite unique, of course, to each individual. Now there's, some things that are, similar. I mean, we all experience heat, we all experience cold, we all experience color, but none of us experience it quite the same way, even though we talk like we do, but we really don't. Even color, I mean, so here's a concept and a conversation that I've had with people before, and it usually goes nowhere. But if you and I are together, Luis, you and I, physically together, we'll call it, and we're in a room, and you point to something, you said, "Oh, that's a gorgeous blue color." We have no idea that we're actually seeing the same color. We're just
Agreed.
applying a name to the experience that we have. We don't know it's the same experience at all. Someplace when we were quote unquote growing up pointed to something and said, "That's blue." And we don't know what they were seeing when they said that. All we know what we were seeing when we said that. So our experiences are all unique. And we have a tendency to believe that through our experiences, we have some idea about what other people's experiences are. But we don't. I mean, behind the scenes, we have much more idea about what those experiences actually are, but as
In
we
so many
experience,
ways,
yeah,
another one would be flavors, food,
right.
smells. You keep
Yeah, yeah.
on, it's just not
So
the
many
same.
things.
The thing about color really hits me because my wife has a phenomenal eye, and she can discern colors. I said, well, that looks the same to me, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so the thought about what is it that she sees that I don't see, I've had that many times.
Right.
Uh,
And the thing is that, and so when that happens, do you embrace your experience, or do you think within yourself it should be more like hers?
No,
Yeah, right there. That's good.
yeah,
If you can
right.
do that,
No,
that's
no.
great, because some people don't do that. Some people go, oh, well, their experience is better. How do I make my experience like theirs? But no, that of course is not the case.
Yeah. So wonderful.
Hey,
Chuck,
thanks, guys. I appreciate it as always. It's always great to.
you do such a marvelous
Yes. Thank you much, Chuck.
transmission. The Setu, the whole. I still think I'm talking to the Setu somewhat.
Well, I'll tell you
It's
something. Like I
just
said, it's the pirate with the parrot sitting on the shoulder. It's as I've done this. It's like you got a friend here and you just turn to talk to him whenever you want to, and it's like that presence is. It's only if I don't know. I don't. There are times where I get really focused on other stuff where I can't feel it's right there. But yeah, it's pretty much because really, and it's not just me. It's what I'm becoming, but it's what everybody, all of you guys are becoming too. It's what everybody's becoming. More of them. So it's just a process that all of us are becoming increasingly familiar with. So I mean, you know, and a lot of individuals say this now, but this, and I'll just call it a phenomenon because I guess it's a word that, maybe applies and we know what it is. When that happens, it's so very different than what it was in the 60s and the 70s, right? It's because we're different than what we were in the 60s and the 70s. It's not the same because we're not the same, you know. Like I said, I know I've mentioned before that at one time a while back, I used to kind of struggle and juggle, what is it do I want to do? Do I want to channel, or do I want to get to know the deeper me to the greatest degree I possibly can? And then I found out that they're one and the same.
that's right,
There is no
indistinguishable.
distinction.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
when I started channeling, the beings of light made me go through different octaves, and they altered my vocal cords, and then the one which they wanted came through loud and clear. And they said, we did that for your benefit, so you would know that this voice is not coming from you.
Right.
That was for my ego, so my ego could hear the difference and say, ah.
Yeah. That's like with Travis. You know, I had an interesting awareness of myself and how my mannerisms change when I'm channeling, especially my speech patterns, even though they're kind of subtle, but they're noticeable to me. So then when I started listening to Travis here, I noticed the same thing happening with him, where his speech patterns changed. And depending on how allowing, I guess I'll just call it that, he is during that session, um, I'll see that happen deeper. And and I've mentioned this is my tendency when most individuals, when I'm with you guys channel, is I have a tendency to connect with them they're channeling from. And I tend to meet that energy there, and not so much through the channeled source. Um, but it goes back and forth. But that seems to be my tendency more.
Yeah, everybody has a little different way, and it should kind of merge more and more with your natural self. Uh, but when you are, let's put it this way, when you have a very color way of normally expressing these energies, I think can be discerned easier, especially for others.
Yeah.
And that's just a thought.
Good thought.
Okay. Yeah. If anybody else has anything to, say, we're here, they're all welcome.
Just gratitude.
Oh, tremendous
Yeah.
gratitude, gratefulness.
Always, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so cool.
Absolutely. I can only say for myself how much this session today, and added to all the sessions that we have had by all the different participants, group members, channelers, so forth, have changed me enormously. So I think that's
We
what's
have some
happening.
nice energies flow through this place.
A fantastic energy.
And that includes the ones that we've got gathered here now, of course.
Yeah, of course, of course, of course. And you know, I was having a conversation recently, and I was just one of the things I said is, can't look at the person, you can't think of the age, you can't think of, you know, whatever they are, they speak funny or they move funny or whatever. We're all the same. That's just an outfit.
Yeah. You know, and what's interesting about that is that if those things come up in an individual, then it really just is a little bit of a tap on the shoulder of beliefs in that regard that you need to explore for yourself. If any of those things, you know, you find to be, oh, it should be like that or whatever, you know. Yeah.